3 days later, the fourth prince ascended the throne. Unable to bear the humiliation, the crown prince took his own life in prison. Grand Tutor Su Chuanhua, who had forged the imperial edict, was sentenced to execution after the autumn harvest. However, in recognition of his past merits and the new emperor's ascension, his family was spared. His son, Su Fong, was stripped of his official rank and demoted to commoner status, with his descendants barred from holding office for life. I never understood why it had to be the fourth prince. My memory holds him as a gentle soul, averse to strife. But at this moment, it no longer mattered. After the verdict, I pleaded with Nia Hanshan to see him. He said nothing, merely sent someone to escort me there. It was my first time entering the Ministry of Punishment's dungeons. Dim light permeated the damp, chilly air. Cold stone bricks bore bloodstains that water could never fully wash away. Though I was the daughter of a criminal, I was also the wife of the prince of the northern frontier. Before Nia Hanshan's stance became clear, no one dared treat me with disrespect. The jailer led me to a secluded cell. I drew a pouch from my sleeve and offered it. Please grant us a private moment. The guard licked his lips, visibly tempted yet hesitant. It's fine. He knows I'm here. That much was understood. Glancing around, the guard swiftly tucked the pouch into his robe and whispered, "Your Highness, don't take too long. Don't make things difficult for me." Very well. I offered a faint smile. The cell was tiny, its square walls pressing down like a great cage upon one's chest. Dim and gloomy, light filtered only through a palm-sized hole high up in the stone wall. When I entered carrying the food box, Father was dressed in a thin cotton jacket, bent over the stone floor, dipping his brush in water to write something. Evidently, the Ministry of Punishment had not subjected him to suffering. I approached, set down the food box, and glanced down. To establish a heart for heaven and earth, to establish a destiny for the people, to carry on the lost teachings of the sages of old, to open an era of peace for all generations. For a long time, this had been the foundation of my father's conduct and the teaching he imparted to his children. Here I am. He lifted his head and smiled at me, his gentle expression unchanged from before. "MHM. I lowered my gaze, lifted the lid of the food box, and took out several small dishes and rice. These were made by Mother herself, using rice from our hometown that she had searched several streets to find. She said she wanted to taste home cooking before she passed, so she wouldn't forget the way back home after death. How is your mother? She cried for several days but is gradually recovering. After a while, once Father's body is laid to rest, she plans to return to our hometown with my brother and the others. Your mother is a strong woman." I offered no comment, respectfully handing him chopsticks. Father picked up a slice of meat, placed it in his mouth, and chewed slowly, his eyes narrowing as if savoring the taste. "Who did he let sit in that seat?" he asked suddenly. "The fourth prince," I replied. "Oh, him. I taught him too. A gentle soul. A good man." A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes before they settled back into calm. "The prince treats you well, doesn't he?" At this, my tone couldn't help but carry a hint of sarcasm as I looked up at him. "Wasn't all of this part of your plan, Father? That arranged marriage 7 years ago, it was you who privately discussed it with the Empress Dowager, wasn't it?" He fell silent for a moment, his gaze complex as he spoke. "You know, Father, I'm no fool. Perhaps I didn't understand at first. But after all these years of his coldness toward me, his constant guarding against me, my daily confinement in the small courtyard of the prince's residence, if I still couldn't grasp certain things, it would be a shame to your teachings," I said calmly. "To pave the way for the crown prince, you sacrificed me." A sharp pang of pain pierced my heart at these words. I paused before continuing. Perhaps His Majesty's favor toward the imperial consort, or perhaps some inadvertent hint of discontent, made you uneasy. Though the crown prince is the designated heir, his power pales compared to the 13th prince, who commands the Jingxi army. The only one who could truly challenge him was. Yet Nya Hanshan was stubborn by nature, wholly devoted to the northern frontier, showing no inclination to choose sides. Even the Empress Dowager, his own aunt, could not sway his resolve. Thus, you set your sights upon me, intending to wield a gentle blade to pierce the armor he has built around himself. You knew his loneliness, his isolation, the weight of unspoken burdens and responsibilities he carried. So you sent me to him. He is a block of ice. Yet once warmed, the passion he unleashes burns hotter than fire. You intended to use me to secure Nya Hanshan's reluctant support. Alas, events seem to have unfolded beyond your and the Empress Dowager's expectations. You likely never imagined that he and I would maintain such a peculiar, distant relationship for so many years. I am not foolish, nor is he stupid. I smiled, reflecting on every encounter, every conversation, every verbal sparring and restraint over the years. It all felt rather tedious. Yet you succeeded in the end. Yes, I succeeded. Just as you wished, Father. That's why you've been so impatient and reckless since my return. I exhaled a long breath, tears falling unnoticed. It took me 3 years to understand his preferences, then 2 more to knock on the door to his heart. But there are things, Father, you might not understand, or perhaps have long forgotten. True affection must be earned with sincerity. If you truly had no desire, if your heart remained unmoved, you could have remained as you were before. No one could have forced you, could they? Though I have my own motives. Father, let's be honest, the prince is one of the most exceptional men in this world. Yes, Father, I have feelings for him. But consider this, if I had never allowed him to develop feelings for me, how many of our Sioux family's hundreds of members, our kin and descendants, would still be alive today? Father, I've warned you many times. His Majesty is suspicious and jealous. He's long regarded you as a thorn in his side. Had you chosen to step back, you wouldn't have gambled everything and ended up in this predicament. But someone must rule this realm. Why can't it be the crown prince? What wrong have I done? Father seemed enraged, slamming his chopsticks onto the porcelain plate with a loud thud. I looked down at the scattered stir-fried pork, closed my eyes briefly, and offered a pale smile. Father, do you know why His Majesty grew so fearful of the crown prince in his later years? Because His Majesty was afraid. He saw his own past reflection in the crown prince, that selfish, cold-hearted, cruel version of himself. Father, ask your conscience, could the crown prince truly be a good ruler? How could he not? I raised him from childhood. Then when he murdered his brother and father, did he show even a shred of mercy? Imperial families must act decisively. Then colluding with the Xiongnu, abandoning tens of thousands of northern frontier citizens, is that also a ruler's decisive action? I shouted. He closed his eyes. My eyes reddened as I stared straight at him. Father, in your youth, you too traveled to the northern frontier. You witnessed its winds and saw the blood shed by its people. Do you truly believe this was right? Father, do you know what pains me most? That the father I once admired, the man who vowed to serve the people and bring them prosperity, ended up leading this very scheme. Those letters. Others may not know, but I know they were all written by your hand. He didn't even hide this from you. Father's gaze was complex, yet faintly relieved. I told you, once his heart warms, I can see everything within him. I wiped the tears from my face. Father, I only ask one thing, why did you do this? He closed his eyes, a hint of resignation in his gaze. Sacrifices must be made. The great Xia dynasty needs a fresh start. Once the crown prince ascends the throne, I will guide him accordingly. But father, are you certain you are right? Today you sacrifice me. Tomorrow you sacrifice the northern frontier. What will you not sacrifice in the future? Above imperial power lies conscience. The lives of all the people rest on the whims of the one seated upon the throne. Their existence is like dust, easily crushed. I closed my eyes, tears falling heavily. After a moment, I rose and knelt. Daughter, I take my leave, bowing to express my gratitude for your years of nurturing. After 3 heavy prostrations, I stood up, looked at him with his eyes closed and silent, and turned to leave. As I was about to step out, I heard an aged voice behind me. Take good care of your mother. She is getting old. And live well with the prince. He may seem stern, but his heart is actually very soft. Wei Wei, when your father chose him for you back then, he did consider your best interests. Yes. I clenched my teeth. My voice choked with emotion, and stepped out. The moment I exited, I saw Nya Hanshan standing tall and graceful outside the cell. We're done talking. MHM. I turned my head away from his gaze, raising my hand to wipe away the tears. I'm here to take you home. All right. The carriage ride back was spent in silence. These past days, I'd been avoiding him. Now that everything was finally settled, it was time to confront him. I instructed Amber to prepare a meal, and we ate quietly together. The weather is lovely today. Would your highness care to join me for a stroll in the garden? I turned and offered him a gentle smile. Very well. Nya Hanshan looked at me, a rare hint of warmth flickering in his eyes. I reached out my hand, and ours clasped. The garden scenery was exquisite, though we seldom visited it together, shutting out the servants behind us. We walked side by side along the cobblestone path. Neither of us spoke. The vibrant blooms filled our vision, dazzlingly bright. Suddenly, he broke the silence. I can let him live. He didn't name names, but I understood. It simply wasn't necessary. Thank you, Your Highness. But those who do wrong must pay the price. Besides, Father may not even wish to live. To preserve his body intact is already a great mercy. I shook my head. Wei Wei, do you hate me? I do not. But there is something I wish to ask of Your Highness. What is it? I stopped, turned sideways, and looked earnestly into his eyes. Your Highness, please report my death as illness. From this day forward, there shall be no more Suruwei in this world. He tightened his grip on my hand. After a long silence, he asked, You wish to leave? I lowered my gaze. Yes. Why? Because of what your father did. He didn't finish. I cut him off. No. I shook my head, my gaze growing gentler. Your Highness knows it's not that. Don't you? Between us, there's been too much suspicion, too much testing, too much scheming. This marriage was always a calculated transaction. That's why Your Highness abandoned me before all the guests on our wedding day. You must have known Consort Lu was merely posturing to gain leverage. Yet you remained wary of me, repeatedly using her to test my loyalty. I didn't understand you back then. This marriage felt too strange, and your father's identity was too peculiar. He had secretly tried to win me over before. The northern frontier was in turmoil at the time. I couldn't help but overthink. He explained hurriedly. I only smiled, Your Highness. I say this not to blame you. Put yourself in my shoes. If I were in your position, I likely would have acted much the same. Your actions, in fact, may not have been entirely without benefit to me. Your coldness toward me at least bought me several years of quiet life. But in truth, looking back now, Your Highness wasn't mistaken. My appearance here was purposeful, to use you. Even so, you are different from them. Is that so? I see no difference between us. I paused. You and I. His pupils contracted slightly. I smiled and continued, I am grateful for the kindness your highness has shown me these past months. It has been the happiest time in the long, lonely years since I married you. Yet, your highness, your kindness was often tinged with self-interest. From the very beginning, you never wished for the crown prince or the 13th prince to ascend the throne. You appeared to stand idly by. Yet it was you who gradually manipulated events. Otherwise, the 13th prince wouldn't have taken such reckless risks. A cautious man like my father wouldn't have been so rash, choosing such an extreme approach. Your ultimate target was the one on the throne. He deserved to die. Han spoke calmly. I nodded solemnly. Yes. He deserved it. But in this affair, I knew exactly what fate awaited my father. Yet I still cooperated with you. I was an accomplice. As I uttered those final words, my voice softened involuntarily, tinged with mockery. I gave him countless chances. Han fell silent. His lips pressed tightly together. I know. I tried to persuade him. It just shows how obsession can trap a person for life. I released my grip on his hand and took a few steps back, creating some distance between us. He followed a few steps forward but ultimately didn't fully close the gap. Wei, I truly cherished you. Not a word I spoke to you was false. I know. Otherwise, your highness wouldn't have gone to such lengths, inventing every possible pretext to protect my entire Sioux family. For that, I am grateful. But I simply cannot overcome my own conscience. Your highness. Though I approached you with ulterior motives, I can honestly say I have no regrets. I never harmed you in any way, nor did I ever endanger the people of Great Xia. As for my father, he deserved his punishment. As his child, I shall say no more. But ultimately, your highness and I are not an ordinary couple. What has happened cannot be erased. Rather than living with this rift, it is better for us to part ways. It is for the best for both of us. Your highness will meet a better woman in the future. You will live a happy and fulfilling life together. He stared intently into my eyes for a long moment. His voice strained with difficulty. Wei, have you ever cherished me? I never imagined I would one day see such unease in his eyes. In a way, Father had seen him too clearly. To say I didn't love him would be a lie. Your highness, how could I not have cherished you? As I spoke these words, I suddenly recalled those youthful days and smiled, lifting my gaze to watch the birds flying freely across the horizon. Back then, at home, in Father's study, I first read Strategy for Pacifying the Frozen Seas at year's end. It was written by the prince when he first assumed command of the Northern Garrison Army. One line particularly struck me, and I still remember it to this day, with my strength, with my heart. I pledge to strive for peace under heaven. I shall give my utmost, even unto death, without regret, and with a clear conscience. To me then, the prince was a distant symbol. I knew you were a hero. The last surviving heir of the Nye family. The legendary war god said to be invincible in battle. But what surprised me was your literary talent. It matched my brother's, who had studied under Father since childhood. I was deeply curious then, what kind of man were you? Your highness? Though born a woman, my father raised me as a son. He and my brother rarely spoke in my absence. So I had more opportunities than other young ladies to learn of the outside world, and through their conversations, I heard much about you. My brother. He truly admired you. Whenever he spoke of you, his words were filled with praise, and my curiosity only grew. At this point, the smile on my lips grew wider. Those days at home before my marriage were among the rarest moments of joy in my memory. Yet my first encounter with you came 5 years later. By then, Your Highness had achieved a great victory over the Xiongnu, forcing Wan Yan to send envoys seeking peace. You rode through the streets in silver-white armor atop a towering steed. I must confess, you were even more impressive than I had imagined. Then later, when the Empress Dowager's imperial decree arrived, I was stunned. All the fluttering feelings I'd once harbored vanished the moment I learned the prince had brought a woman back with him. Yet in the end, I still had no choice but to marry you. I shook my head, my smile fading. After our marriage, though I never voiced it, resentment lingered deep within. I couldn't fathom why fate had dealt me such a hand. So I immersed myself in books, burying myself completely in their pages. Yet strangely, we found remarkable harmony in this pursuit. Each conversation felt like meeting a kindred spirit long overdue. My heart still stirred. Your Highness, a true confidant is rare in life. But we met at the wrong time. You doubted me, tested me, and I call it pride, or simply unwillingness to compromise. During our time in Hunyang City, I read nearly every book you left in the bedroom and study. Your inner world proved far more fascinating than I'd imagined. It was also my first time stepping beyond the secure walls of the capital, witnessing war firsthand. Some things can only be truly understood through personal experience. Behind those cold numbers in the battle reports lie lives, people who laughed, cried, and fought fiercely to survive. Perhaps it was from that day onward that I began to see and understand you from another perspective. Later, when Your Highness and I began to open our hearts to each other, I was truly happy. Only, I can no longer do so. I tugged at the corners of my mouth, forcing a smile, though I knew it must look grim. It's not too late for us to start anew now. All these years, I've been cruel to you. I know it. Yet I still acted this way. As he spoke, he reached out and seized my hand, his urgency palpable. Now that all matters are settled, things are different. Wei Wei, you promised me you'd come with me to the northern frontier. I'll take good care of you. If you dislike staying cooped up in the manor, we'll go horseback riding. I'll take you to see the rippling emerald waters of the lake, to witness the Buddha's light on the snow-capped mountains. If you don't want to stay in the north, we'll wander through the Jiangnan region. We'll go anywhere you desire. Your Highness, I will certainly go to the northern frontier. I looked at him, speaking each word deliberately. But I'm alone. I left unsaid. The conversation ultimately reached no conclusion and ended abruptly. In the days that followed, Nia Hanshan stayed by my side almost every day, persuading me through his actions. I never mentioned leaving again. Everything seemed to return to where it began. Late autumn. A cool, rainy day. My brother and I brought back our father's body. Following his dying wish, we burned it clean, holding the ashes. My brother led mother back to our hometown. Before they left, Nia Hanshan accompanied me to see them off. Mother and my brother were visibly conflicted, but in private, they urged me to live well with the prince. Holding Nia Hanshan's hand, I smiled gently. After seeing them off, on a sunny, breezy morning, I set fire to the side courtyard, having already arranged for word to spread in the capital that the Prince of Jinbei's consort had perished in the flames. I set out alone with Amber for the northern frontier. I cherished the landscapes of the northern frontier, the air of utter freedom there, the ability to walk the streets without restraint, to simply be myself. I knew Nia Hanshan would uncover the truth, and I didn't need to hide it from him. The fire was merely a pretext to silence the gossip. During the days awaiting my father's execution, I spoke with him many times more. Those intricate, dense cracks lay fully exposed before us. Our beginning was not pure, and our journey was far from beautiful. How could we possibly beg for a perfect ending? With Amber, I settled in a small town in the northern frontier. With the threat of the Xiongnu gone, the people of the northern frontier wore more vitality in their faces, living with positivity and optimism. Under Nya Hanshan's diligent governance, their lives gradually improved. I opened a girls' academy, following my father's example, teaching impoverished girls to read and write. We also studied agricultural texts, experimenting with planting seeds I had specially collected and brought along. Alongside the old farmers, the northern frontier remained harsh and cold, little could be cultivated. I felt no urgency. I had a lifetime to pursue this endeavor. Nya Han never reappeared. I had begun to believe we might never meet again in this lifetime. Until one day, returning from buying groceries with Amber, I caught sight of a fleeing figure at the street corner. Just one glance was enough. I knew. Amber, seeing me dazed, asked, "Miss, what are you looking at?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Let's go." Nya Hanshan's perspective. It was a long time before I stepped back out from the corner. Looking around, the person I'd thought of day and night was nowhere to be found in the crowd. I knew her keen perception. Even with just a glance, she must have recognized me. But she clearly didn't want to see me. So she left without a moment's hesitation. Heir stood beside me, his expression complex, filled with disappointment. "General, the lady has left. MHM. I felt a pang of sadness, responding softly before turning to say, "Let's go." "General, how long do you plan to keep this up?" Heir's voice carried a hint of irritation. When did our decisive prince of the northern frontier become so indecisive? From Hunyang City to Liuhe town, even the swiftest horse takes 3 hours. Whenever you had a moment, you'd rush here regardless of day or night, just to catch a glimpse. Isn't it because you want to see the lady? And here she is. Yet since arriving, you've constantly avoided her. What could possibly be unspeakable between husband and wife? Yes. I know, the lady's father was imprisoned by your order. But he violated royal law, forging imperial edicts, colluding with the Xiongnu, each crime deserving death. Besides, you've labored tirelessly to protect the Su family. The lady isn't unreasonable. If it really comes down to it, well, I'll just kneel on the washboard. As he spoke, his voice suddenly dropped, unconsciously rubbing his own knees. His gaze began to drift uncertainly toward mine. I glanced at him and shook my head. "General, for heaven's sake, your wife has run off. What pride are you clinging to now? Up here in the north, we don't have the same fuss as those city folk. Bowing to your wife isn't really bowing. It's not about face. If kneeling on a washboard could fix things, why wouldn't I be willing?" I gave a bitter smile. "Then why?" "I think the lady still has feelings for you, General." Heir scratched his head, looking perplexed. "Because she understands reason." I lowered my head and sighed deeply. The weapon I once wielded against her now stands as an insurmountable chasm between us. Precisely because she understands reason, she chose to cooperate with me even knowing she was being used. I can't begin to fathom how agonizing that decision must have been for her. I knew of her long before my aunt arranged our marriage. To be precise, she was the talk of the entire capital. The Su Grand Tutor's household treasured a pearl of a daughter. Among the noble ladies of the capital, her virtue and eloquence were unmatched. Her scholarly prowess rivaled any man. Composing poetry in 7 steps was but a commonplace feat. I too had been curious. And once, at a banquet, someone had even pointed her out to me among the crowd of high-born ladies. A group of young ladies crowded together by the pavilion, feeding fish. She was the most striking among them. Her attire wasn't the finest, yet her radiant presence drew the eye and held it captive. She smiled often, her eyes crinkling like the moonflowers blooming across the northern frontier in summer. Her very presence felt like pure joy. Someone teased me, if it were Su Rue. What then? I never imagined anything with her, such a fine girl would be wasted on me. I merely smiled and replied, if the pearl is fine, it's not the one I seek. Back then, I had just renamed the orphaned daughter of the Zhang family as Lu Rower and placed her under my care in the mansion. To avoid my aunt's constant pressure to marry and to steer clear of unnecessary trouble, I declared publicly that I would never take a wife. I planned to wait a few years, until the furor died down, then quietly report her death and send her away. With the Xiongnu unvanquished and the northern frontier unsettled, marrying would only waste someone else's youth. But later, circumstances proved beyond my control. Lu Rower's identity was too sensitive. Though I sheltered her within the manor, I could deceive others but not my aunt. The Zhang family's embezzlement of military funds was a grave crime. Moreover, due to their misappropriation, our northern frontier was plunged into chaos, with the Xiongnu in the north growing restless. Allowing her to live was already an extraordinary act of mercy. How could she possibly tolerate Lu Rower staying by my side? Furthermore, my refusal to marry and bear an heir was also a thorn in my aunt's side. Thus, the matter of the arranged marriage arose. I never imagined it would be her, nor did I expect my aunt to choose her for me. On the surface, the embezzlement case appeared to be the Zhang family's doing. Yet the more I investigated, the more unsettled I grew. They believed their cover was airtight, shifting all blame onto the Zhangs. But I sensed something amiss. Clues pointed toward the capital, toward the crown prince in his lofty position. Grand Tutor Su also subtly sought to win my favor. As for my aunt, she seemed different from before. Now she was being forced to marry me. I watched her, pale-faced and kneeling, pleading with my aunt to revoke the decree. I should have refused alongside her, but when I met her eyes, I understood I had no choice. I needed her support for a counterattack against the Xiongnu, not this passive defense. So I remained silent. During the wedding ceremony, Lu Rower threw a tantrum. I knew full well what my departure meant to her. Yet I went through with it. Partly, she was dissatisfied with this marriage, partly, it was a test. After all, she was the daughter of Grand Tutor Su, renowned in the capital for her talents. She might well harbor other intentions. Her behavior, however, surprised me. I had expected her to make a scene, perhaps even refuse the marriage outright and leave. In a way, I might have hoped for that. After all, being treated this way by her husband on her wedding day, I had practically handed her the excuse. Yet she did not. Her conduct surpassed my expectations, dignified, composed, and poised. She held her ground in this dire situation, truly living up to her reputation as the capital's renowned lady. This only deepened my apprehension toward her. On our wedding night, I deliberately brought up the wedding ceremony and Lu Rower. Her clarity and approach to the matter astonished me even more. To be honest, I admired her. Were it not for our circumstances, I believe we might have become friends who could converse freely. But I couldn't fully believe her claim that she only sought a peaceful life in the main courtyard. Grand Tutor Su's ambitions were vast. He sought to draw me into the Crown Prince's faction. And as his daughter, how could her motives truly be so simple? I couldn't afford to gamble, nor could the northern frontier. After our marriage, I tested her repeatedly. Yet in truth, she never made a single move, adhering to her duties with almost harsh strictness. As for the rumors swirling around her, they never ceased. Perhaps human baseness thrives on watching those in high places fall into the mire. The greater the praise she once received, the more scorn and slander she now endured. She was like a breeze, or a pool of water, silently bearing it all. She never once complained to me, instead faithfully fulfilling her duties as a wife. Each conversation with her, where our perspectives clashed and aligned, always delighted me. She truly seemed different from her father, rational, intelligent, fair, and kind. Though a woman, her chest held a fiery passion. She believed in justice and stood firm, and I realized I had developed feelings for her that were unlike any I'd known before. But now, it seemed too late to turn back. To address this, I had no choice but to remain stationed in the northern frontier, hoping distance and time would erase the feelings I'd developed for her. Reports from my spies in the capital suggested she seemed to live more freely without me. 6 years. I spent 6 years observing her. Human emotions are difficult to control. I couldn't say whether this was a rational decision or an emotional craving, but I wanted to try to get closer to her. Hunyang City, she came here at her aunt's command. This is the place where I grew up and dedicated my life to. Knowing she loved reading, I opened my study and bedroom to her. I laid bare my life and thoughts for her to see, attempting to draw closer. Yet she clearly felt uneasy. I understood that after so many years of estrangement, healing would take time. I was in no hurry. The attack was suspicious. I knew someone had leaked information, but it also presented an opportunity. The northern frontier had been entangled with the Xiongnu for far too long. It was time to bring it to an end. Wan Yen was stubborn and self-willed. News of my death from the ambush spread, compounded by this year's severe blizzards causing famine across the grasslands. His sons each harbored their own ambitions. Faced with internal turmoil and external threats, his temperament would surely drive him to pour all his strength into a southern campaign, and that was precisely my chance. Yet 2 things caught me off guard. First, how my aunt learned of this in advance and sent for her. Second, that she chose to stay. She proved kinder, braver, and stronger than I ever imagined. Serving as a physician, forcing herself to concoct medicine, risking her life to draw her sword against the enemy. A young lady pampered in the capital. Her hands untouched by the spring sun, she did what needed to be done, and what shouldn't have been done. I believe she is different from her father. His Majesty has fallen gravely ill. The winds have grown fierce. And Grand Tutor Su, impatient to seize the military power in my hands, has made his move. Yet he may not understand, the northern frontier army is mine. It cannot be taken simply by sending someone after my death. He cannot. Nor can the emperor seated upon the throne. I intend to make him understand. Evidently, he grasped it swiftly, shifting tactics to refocus his attention on Weiwei. My unrestrained affection for Weiwei became the capital he exploited. The 13th prince's relentless pressure clearly weighed heavily on him, especially after that incident of colluding with the Xiongnu. That accusation was my doing, and mine to clear. If he could leverage my influence, why couldn't I ride the wave? And at the heart of it all was Weiwei. To make that old fox believe my affection was genuine required her cooperation. The more I knew her, the more I cherished her, the more my heart ached for her. When did I become so deeply entangled? I couldn't say. But I understood, I was cruel to her. Yet if time could be rewound, I would still choose this path. The valleys of Putua Mountain cannot bury the lonely souls of warriors. The Buddhas of Putua Temple cannot hear all the cries of loved ones. The sacred springs in the mountains cannot wash away the sins of murderers. I did nothing else. I merely forged a blade called Truth and Justice, placed it on the desk, and watched as she plunged it into her own heart, questioning her conscience. I watched her suffer, but I could say nothing. My affection for her was genuine. Yet in this moment, it began to sour. She understood everything. Being too clever and rational might not be such a blessing after all. Even deceiving oneself becomes a luxury. And so I won. I won completely. The price was her. Heir asked me why I dared not see her. I twisted my lips bitterly. How could I possibly face her? General, since you're already here, you should at least see the lady. Heir, clearly still reluctant, followed behind, urging me earnestly. No. Seeing her doing well. My voice caught in my throat. My eyes locked onto that familiar figure across the room. Unblinking. When did you arrive? She stood bathed in light, a gentle smile playing at her lips. My throat tightened. Compared to her natural ease, I suddenly felt unable to meet her gaze. I turned my head away. And after a long moment, a non-committal finally escaped my throat. Heir grew impatient watching this. He shoved me from behind, sending me stumbling forward a few steps, closer to her. She didn't flinch, her gaze clear as she tilted her head back to look at me. Heir's booming voice followed from behind. Madam, we just arrived too. The general finished his work late last night. Didn't even have time for a drink before setting out for here. Oh, is that so? We had some dry rations, so we ate a little. My voice cracked as I explained, my heart pounding like a drum. I carefully shifted my gaze back, greedily drinking in her face. Those hardtack biscuits are tough and dry. What kind of food is that? Heir grumbled. There's a decent noodle stall in Lioha town. Since we're here, let's grab a bite first. She turned her attention to Heir. Heir flashed her an ingratiating smile while winking at me. Madam, I'm not hungry. You and the general go ahead. As if oblivious to Heir's hint, she lowered her eyes with a soft smile and replied gently, all right. If you're not hungry, then forget it. Also, don't call me madam. Su Ruwei is dead. I'm Su Ruwei now. Su was her mother's maiden name. After speaking, she turned her gaze back to me. Your Highness, do you have time? I was speechless. How could I possibly refuse? I tossed the horsewhip into Heir's hand. Yes. She gave Heir a nod of acknowledgement, then turned first and walked ahead. I followed closely behind. Her pace wasn't fast. Yet amid the bustling, coming and going crowd, she carried an air of serene tranquility. These days away from the capital, these days apart from me, had clearly allowed the brocade within her heart to weave itself into greater perfection. Perhaps because she had her back to me, I could now gaze at her without restraint. Even just her silhouette stirred a deep longing within me. Her hand was right ahead, within reach. I wanted to take it, but I dared not. I could only clench my fist tightly. She was so good, how could I ever treat her lightly or carelessly? Your Highness, please come forward. Perhaps uncomfortable under my intense gaze. She suddenly halted. She paused for a moment, waiting until I reached her side before starting to walk again. All right. Perhaps driven by selfish desire, I yearned to draw nearer. Yet she shifted her pace imperceptibly, maintaining a distance neither close nor distant. Half an arm's length away. Yet it felt like an insurmountable chasm. Bitterly, I made no further move. She said nothing along the way, only leading me to a noodle stall, set up by the roadside. A pot of water bubbled away on an iron stove resembling a barrel. Small wooden tables lined the perimeter, laden with condiments like salt and chopped scallions. The vendor, a middle-aged man, clearly knew her well. He greeted her warmly the moment they met, though his gaze lingered on me with a hint of hesitation and scrutiny. 2 bowls of beef noodles, one without scallions. She called out with a smile. Right away. Mr. Su. The vendor responded loudly. I don't like scallions. She still remembered saying. The noodles arrived quickly. The middle-aged man clearly favored her, placing far more beef in her bowl than in anyone else's. And by extension, I received the same special treatment. Thank you. You're too kind. Mr. Su. Enjoy your meal. The middle-aged vendor chuckled, turning away to attend to other customers. Perhaps noticing the question in my eyes, she lowered her head and explained. His daughter studies at my academy. I knew she had established an academy dedicated to teaching children and young women to read and write. For someone who had made a name for herself in the capital, a city teeming with talented women, teaching was naturally second nature to her. Reading itself was a precious thing. In the war-torn northern frontier, where teachers were scarce, it felt like an even greater luxury. Is it hard work? I asked. Not hard at all. She shook her head and smiled, her eyes sparkling with light. This is what I love. Before this, I never imagined I'd achieve such a thing, a woman opening an academy. Though the capital is prosperous, its customs aren't as open as the northern frontier. Reading and writing were traditionally reserved for men. Even daughters from noble families who studied to gain literary fame did so merely to secure a better marriage, to be looked upon with greater favor by their husband's family. My father, however, treated my brother and me with equal indulgence. To this day, I feel nothing but tenderness and gratitude. Reading and writing bring understanding. Women can be just as capable as men. She glanced around as she spoke. I'm fortunate here. People aren't as opposed to girls studying as they are in the capital. Take this noodle stall owner. For instance, he was the first to send his daughter to me. I'm deeply grateful for his trust. Seeing her smile, I smiled too. The northern frontier sees much warfare. Most men have battlefield experience. In severe times, entire families are wiped out, leaving only widows and orphans. Women often shoulder responsibilities equal to men's. Naturally, their perspective on women differs. Indeed, the women here seemed more open-hearted and decisive than those in the capital. Her words hadn't even faded when, across the street, a man clad in coarse cloth and a short-sleeved tunic appeared, shrieking as he scrambled away, head in hands. Behind him, a woman wielded a rolling pin, chasing him angrily. Wife! Wife! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Passers-by on the street were unfazed, some even snickering derisively. I looked at her. A smile played at the corners of her mouth as she shook her head. When she turned back and our eyes met, her smile faded slightly. Your Highness, eat quickly. The noodles will get soggy. After you finish, I want to take you somewhere. All right. Moments later, the noodles were gone. She pulled a coin purse from her waist, carefully counted out 8 copper coins, and placed them on the table. Let's go. I didn't know where she intended to take me, but I suspected that place was the very reason she had come to see me today. Following her, I arrived at a plot of cultivated farmland outside the town. The field was neatly divided into several sections, and judging by the foliage, at least 8 different crops were growing there. She pointed to the farmland before us. Your Highness, this is the result of what has survived so far. Before coming to the northern frontier, I specifically asked my brother to collect seeds for drought-resistant and cold-tolerant crops. Truthfully, I know little about farming. Book knowledge alone feels superficial. These past 2 years have been filled with detours, and I've grown increasingly aware of my limitations in this area. With more students arriving now, my energy simply can't keep up. I know Your Highness has also been laboring over this matter, though I don't know if it will help. I hope to contribute what little I can. Wei Wei. Thank you. My voice was hoarse. The better she becomes, the more it highlights my own baseness. The better she becomes, the more it makes me feel ashamed of myself. I knew she was doing this. She never forgot the words we once exchanged. These past 2 years, I have often stood in the distance, watching her secretly. I saw her in the academy, pausing after every sentence as she taught children and young women to read. 6-year-old novices sat alongside 16 or 17-year-old girls, their clear voices drifting through the windows and over the courtyard walls. I saw her when the children misbehaved, her usually gentle, polite nature replaced by the sight of her chasing them around the courtyard with a stick. I've seen her roll up her sleeves in the fields, working alongside the old farmers, carrying water to irrigate the land. She'd stumble and fall, scraping her hands and feet raw. My heart ached. But as I took a step forward, I remembered she didn't want to see me. I've seen her stand in the fields, her face clouded with sorrow when the crops withered. Your Highness is too kind. You're the one who's truly kind. I thought bitterly to myself. How have you been lately, Your Highness? She sat down on the field ridge, plucking a small wildflower from the edge and tucking it into her hair. The golden petals nestled among her jet-black strands as she gazed out at the vast expanse of the plains, a carefree smile playing on her lips. I sat beside her, reason keeping me half an arm's length away, not too well. Though the war has ended, the northern frontier has suffered years of turmoil, with deep-rooted problems and entrenched aristocratic clans. The newly assimilated nomads from the steppes remain unintegrated. None of this can be resolved overnight. Governing a region was no easier than leading troops into battle. I was still navigating the intricate details and delicate balances of power. She lifted the corner of her lips, her tone calm as she spoke slowly. Governing a great nation is like cooking a small fish. It must be done with patience and care. The same applies to governing a region. Your Highness, you have actually done quite well these past 2 years. When I first arrived in Lioha town, its streets were desolate, bearing the marks of hardship and hardship. Only 7 or 8 shops selling mutton and liquor lined the streets. Now, taverns and tea houses stand side by side, and even a silk merchant from the south has opened a shop here. The lives of the townspeople and nearby residents have visibly improved. Though they may not know you personally, they recognize that it is you who has made their lives better day by day. Do you know? When I visited students' homes, I even saw memorial tablets they had made for you, praying for your longevity. Her tone grew playful as she spoke, as if amused by her own words. Memorial tablets for longevity? I smiled wryly, lowering my head. The people's hearts follow you. The folk of the northern frontier hold you in deep affection. Some things seem insignificant, as small as dust, yet they possess the force of thunder. She clenched her fist. Father used to say a nation isn't just its ruler, but the millions of people who make it up. You must value the people's hearts. Where their hearts lead, you can expand your borders and keep the nation safe and secure. To this day, I still believe he was right. Only later, he forgot. Her tone carried a hint of regret. I shook my head, letting out a wry laugh and a sigh. Time leaves no trace, but human hearts change easily. Grand Tutor Su was once such a noble and upright figure. He braved the pressure of the powerful to risk his life delivering petitions for the flood-stricken people in the south. He fought tirelessly for the wronged and oppressed. When the evidence pointed to him, I couldn't believe it. Only after countless investigations did I dare to accept it. Then, Your Highness, will you change in the future? She suddenly asked. I paused, unable to give a definitive answer. Shaking my head, I replied, I don't know. The future is too distant. Who can speak with such certainty before their last breath? After a pause, I smiled tentatively and asked, Wei Wei, are you worried? Perhaps you could choose to watch over me. If I ever become blinded by power, neglect the people's welfare, or grow greedy and cruel, you may end me yourself. I'm just a weak woman. If you act, I will not resist. I stared at her intently, watching her lower her eyelids, avoiding my gaze. Your Highness, if that day ever comes, I doubt I'd be the one to act. Others like you would surely rush to do so. I still believe there is justice and righteousness in this world. Perhaps sensing my intentions, she rose, unwilling to continue. It's getting late. I have classes this afternoon. Your Highness, I must take my leave. She curtsied, her posture as dignified and graceful as ever. I watched her retreating figure as the northern wind swept through her, lifting the hem of her skirt. I should have gone after her. But I didn't. Heir might be right, I am a coward. If I truly cannot let go, then perhaps I should be braver. The hardest part is always the beginning. I had already met her once. After that day, once I'd wrapped up matters in Hanyang City, I settled permanently in Liuhe town. It was heir and the others who toiled, shuttling back and forth between Hanyang and Liuhe to deliver and retrieve the approved documents. Whenever I had free time, I stayed by her side. Over time, the entire town knew that a man had appeared, constantly by the side of Mr. Su from the academy. When others inquired, she paused before saying he was a friend. Fearing I might scare her away, I dared not directly express my desire for union. But she understood. Her attitude was clear, she had rejected me openly and subtly many times. I pretended not to hear. For a man from the northern frontier courting a wife, the foremost requirement is to be shameless. But Amber's glances grew increasingly hostile. Several times she even grabbed a broom and chased me out. I knew she was watching from the study, likely seething inside. One day, Amber raised the broom again, but before she could swing it, a shout came from inside. She shot me a glare and trotted off. Moments later, she handed me a note with a complex expression. Pushing me toward the door, I unfolded the paper. In elegant handwriting, 2 lines were written. Mid-Autumn Festival. The Mid-Autumn Festival was a traditional northern frontier celebration. On this day, men and women dressed their finest, venturing out at night to admire the lanterns. It was also known as the Valentine's Day of the North. Invited. I felt both nervous and hopeful. The night before, I barely slept. Thinking back, in all these years with her, aside from that brief time in the capital, we'd hardly ever shared such simple, romantic moments. Moonlight spilled like water, silver frost covering the ground. Holding a peony lantern, I stood waiting outside her small courtyard nearly half an hour early. I didn't dare knock. Waiting until the door opened, she emerged wearing a sky blue gown, her jet black hair pinned up with a magnolia green jade hairpin. Carrying a rabbit lantern, she was clearly dressed with great care. Her features were exquisitely painted, utterly beautiful. "How long have you been waiting?" she asked, smiling at me. "Not long." Her smile was almost too much for me to bear. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't bring myself to do so. The hairpin I'd carved over the past fortnight, hidden in my robe, felt faintly warm in my hand. I intended to give it to her later. "Let's go. The lantern festival is about to begin." She waved the rabbit lantern in her hand as a signal. It was a water moon festival tradition. If a man harbored feelings for a woman, he would craft a lantern for her by hand. If she reciprocated, she would accept it. But she already had one. Holding my lantern, I hesitated before offering it anyway. She glanced down at it, then finally took it, clasping both the rabbit lantern and mine in her palm. "Let's go." "Okay." My lips curved upward. I was happy. I wondered if this meant she was actually willing. Heshi town was small, nowhere near as grand as Hanyang City's Lantern Festival celebrations. But as long as I was with her, any place held a different meaning. Today, lanterns hung everywhere in the town. Crowds thronged the streets, and as far as the eye could see, couples were wrapped in each other's arms. I moved closer to her, and for once, she didn't push me away. We wandered like we used to in the capital, guessing lantern riddles, playing ring toss, savoring the famous mutton pastries of the northern frontier. We even let a kind old woman tie red strings around our wrists. 1,000 knots in the red thread, only for those in love. I looked down at them and smiled. By the time the moon hung high in the sky, we reached Lover's Bridge, its surface adorned with red flowers skillfully arranged by deft-handed girls. Beneath the bridge, the water was dotted with lanterns of every hue, gathering into a flowing river, like a sea of moving starlight and fireflies, drifting gently forward, breathtakingly beautiful in the moonlight. Want to set some river lanterns? I asked her with a smile, her gaze fixed on the scene below. She answered with an innocent, unblinking look, yes. I moved my wrist, and the tied red thread pulled hers along, as if I were holding her hand. Suddenly, 3 or 4 children, about 7 or 8 years old, laughed and scrambled toward us. Sharp blades sliced through the thread, severing the connection between us. The tied red thread snapped clean through the middle and fell to the ground. My face drained of color, my heart sinking. Looking up, nearby men and women were already cursing. We weren't the only ones affected. The red thread symbolized marital fate, its breaking signified ill omen. The children's parents arrived swiftly, their faces turning pale at the sight. They apologized profusely while scolding their children. Amidst the cries and apologies, she paused, then nonchalantly grabbed my wrist. Come on, she said. Let's release the river lanterns. As the lanterns drifted into the water, people around us closed their eyes to make wishes. Still feeling uneasy, I forced a smile and asked, "Aren't you making a wish?" She turned and smiled at me, her eyes holding a depth I couldn't quite fathom. No. I have nothing to ask for. Is that so? Yes. She raised her wrist, the broken red thread seeming to remind us of something, like how red threads easily snap. And the moon is destined to set. Some things, after all, must be left behind. The riverbank remained bustling, filled with joyous laughter everywhere. Yet the air around my ears grew still. I stared into her eyes, my expression freezing, my voice hoarse, Wei. She no longer looked at me, instead turning her gaze to the moon in the sky, cutting off my words. The expression on her profile was gentle, her voice soft and measured. Your Highness, I know your feelings, but when I left the capital, I never once imagined a future with you. Since childhood, I studied alongside my elder brother. To speak with pride, if I were a man, I would not be inferior to him in the slightest. But because I was born a woman, my world was confined by society's rules from birth. Locked within the walls of the manor, men have vast realms to roam freely, to unleash their ambitions. I could only read travelogues, seeing rivers and mountains through books. Even with mountains and valleys in my heart, I couldn't roam freely. I thought this might be my life, until I came to the northern frontier. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with tenderness and resolve. Your Highness, I truly love this place. Here, I feel free. I refuse to return to that narrow, four-walled world. Wei, no one will ever ask you to return. I love you. Let's start anew. I won't restrict you. If you wish to establish an academy, do so. If you desire to see the grand landscapes, go forth. You may pursue any path your heart desires. These past days, I've sensed it, you still hold affection for me. Don't you? Yes. But deep down, your Highness knows it's impossible. Doesn't it? Why else would you not dare to see me for 2 whole years? Her sharpness silenced me completely. Yes. Precisely because I understood it all too clearly. I dared only lurk like a mole shunning the light, hiding quietly in the shadows. Watching from afar. Even one more glance felt like a luxury. I lowered my gaze, my hand clenching tightly at my side. Perhaps it was sheer unwillingness, but I gritted my teeth and asked one last time, Wei, is it truly impossible? She lowered her eyes, avoiding my gaze. Sometimes silence speaks volumes. She handed me the peony lantern. Thank you for your company, Your Highness. Today has been truly joyful for Rue. Please take care of yourself. Rue takes her leave. She curtsied, just as she had done before. The rabbit lantern fell into the crowd and vanished silently. Clutching the peony lantern in my palm, I stood amidst couples radiating happiness. Gazing up at the moon, my heart felt hollow, throbbing with pain. What goes around comes around. The hairpin hidden in my bosom would never grace her hair. The bright moon hung high, illuminating past and present. That mid-autumn festival. She knelt begging not to marry. Now, I only wish her well. Now I alone gaze at the moon, as if enduring slow torture. I am heir. Since returning from the Water Moon Festival, the general has been acting strangely. He buried himself in northern frontier affairs. Busier than ever. He used to visit the lady frequently, but now he rarely goes, as if avoiding something. Only occasionally did I catch him, hiding furtively to peek from the sidelines. I didn't know what had happened. Before leaving, the general had been so cheerful, even grabbing me and spending ages picking out clothes, asking which one looked best on me. But I'm just a rough soldier, how could I know what girls find attractive? To me, the general looked handsome in anything. His unusual behavior still tugged at my heartstrings. I vaguely sensed trouble brewing between the general and his wife again. When I asked him about it, he only fell silent. The Nye family was renowned for its loyalty and valor. Its members all laid to rest in the northern frontier. Now only the general remained, having sacrificed so much for the northern border. His affection for his wife was plain for all to see, and it worried me deeply. Two people who clearly care for each other, yet they just won't be together. With no other option, I sought out Lady Wang. As fellow women, I thought she might be easier to talk to. After hearing my story, she fell into a long, complex silence. As I was leaving, she suddenly uttered a strange, enigmatic remark. Hurt doesn't become noble just because it has a reason. That doesn't make it worthy of forgiveness. I understood it only partially. Later, when the general learned of these words, he froze in place for a long while. That night, gazing up at the moon, he drank himself into a stupor. The end.